So the wheel has been spun and today we need to build ourselves a Warlock. So in case you need a refresher, a Warlock is someone who is A, not in and of themselves in any way magical, but B, has nonetheless gained access to magic thanks to some sort of deal made with a powerful entity. The classic Warlock after which the class was created is of course the German legend of Faust, or Dr. Faustus if you want to go all English Renaissance about it, but frankly, Faust is kind of boring. After all, in the original legend, all he does with the deal that he makes with the devil is force a woman he likes to fall in love with him, and then that woman ends up killing the baby that they make together and then going to heaven anyway, because it's apparently not the act itself that's bad, it's the intention behind it. So, killing babies and still somehow being the good guy in a story is certainly a mood, I'm not going to lie, but no, we're not going to use Faust as our Warlock template today, sorry. So instead we're turning to something a little bit more recent in the form of a normal, everyday human girl from Kansas who is accidentally whisked away from her boring life, ends up in a magical world where everything is in Technicolor. And thanks to a pair of shoes and a deal she makes with a fairy in a bubble, she gains access to magic. Yes, that's right, we are building Dorothy Gale.
Dorothy Gale.
So, like with Elsa, I'm going to build Dorothy as accurately to her in-movie appearances as I can. I'm first going to build her using the newly released 2024 rules, and then I'm going to build her again using the 2014 rules, and we will compare the two to see which is better. As a disclaimer, I am not interested in min-maxing here, I'm not interested in optimal builds or anything of the sort, because let's be honest here, mechanics in any game, but particularly a TTRPG like D&D, can always be cheesed, and it's not fair really comparing an optimized 2024 build with an unoptimized 2014 build or vice versa. So where possible, we're striving for parity between the two editions. We're talking the same spells, the same class features, etc., and both at level 9. So, of course, our Dorothy is going to be an Archfey Warlock because, hey, that there is a fairy that she's doing a deal with, and she literally steals these shoes off the still warm corpse of her sister. So Archfey it is. And straight out of the gate, the Archfey subclass gives us some really interesting features. Namely, she gets Misty Step, which I can not only use for free a number of times equal to my proficiency bonus per day, but I can also cast it any time that I cast an illusion or enchantment spell, and at level 6, I can also cast it as a reaction to taking damage, and in the process either make myself invisible or do damage to enemies within 5 feet, kind of like an Eldritch version of Thunderstep. So that all makes sense. Those ruby slippers of hers, well, we all know that if you click them 3 times together and say there's no place like home, you teleport back to Kansas. But what's not shown in the movies is that if you just click them 1 time and say shabla-doo, you teleport 30 feet away into an unoccupied square that you can see within range. So she was always able to do this, it just kind of never came up in the movies. Now, the 2014 version does get a similar feature to this, except in her case, she can only use Misty Step as a reaction to taking damage, and she can only use it once per rest. Also, she only has the option to turn invisible while doing this, not to turn invisible and cause damage. So that's a definite downgrade on the 2024 version. She doesn't even get Misty Step as one of her always prepared spells. What does she get in place of this? Well, she gets the ability to frighten or charm anyone within a 10-foot cube of her, which is... we'll circle back on that later. So at level 3 with the 2014 version, we do get to choose our Pact boon, and of course we're going to go with Pact of the Chain, which gives us access to the Find Familiar spell and the ability to use our familiar in combat. In Dorothy's case, her familiar is her dog Toto or Belinda the chicken, depending on the version that we're watching, and in both cases we see her familiar attacking enemies on Dorothy's behalf to great effect. In the new version, Pact boons work a little bit differently because they're now all Eldritch Invocations instead of just something that she gets for free. So let's go through those now. So at level 9, we get 6 invocations to choose from. So of course, one of those is going to be Pact of the Chain, and another is going to be Investment of the Chainmaster, so we can actually use Find Familiar in combat. We're then going to go with Eldritch Mind to give her advantage on concentrating on spells. Dorothy's very good at concentrating. We're going to give her lessons of the first ones to give her an additional bonus feat. And in this case, that feat is going to be lucky, because say one thing for Dorothy, she is very lucky. Next, we're going to then go with Ascendant Step, which allows her to cast Levitate at will. That's another upgrade on those ruby slippers of hers. Let's say she's learned a trick from the fairy here. And finally, we're taking the classic Mask of Many Faces that lets her disguise herself at will. Hey, you know, if this random horse is able to change colour whenever it wants to, Dorothy can as well. Over to the 2014 version, and things are looking very different indeed, surprisingly so, in fact. I must say, I think I actually prefer the 2014 invocation choices here, because Mask of Many Phases, Eldritch Mind, and Investment of the Chainmaster are all the same, but in addition, she gets another Chainmaster invocation, which is Gift of the Ever-Loving Ones, that allows her to maximize healing that she receives when her familiar is nearby. And we also have Eldritch Sight, which lets her cast Detect Magic at will, because Dorothy's pretty good at spotting magical things. In both cases, of course, she is a human. In the case of the 2024 version, we're going with a farmer background that gives her the tough feat, and as her human versatile feat, we're going to go with skilled, with proficiencies in persuasion, deception, and survival. That's actually 3 feats as a baseline out of the gate, which is just incredible. Talking about feats, we do have 2 more choices to make at levels 4 and 8, and in both cases, at level 4, we're going to take Observant, because she's good at spotting things, and at level 8, we're taking Speedy or Mobile, depending on the version you're playing, because she's pretty good at running away. And that just leaves us with spells. Now, admittedly, we don't see Dorothy casting a lot of spells in the movies, but she does do a few things. Namely, we see her talking to animals, we see her bringing a sofa to life and giving it the ability to fly, we see her killing the Gnome King by dropping an egg into its mouth, we see her conjuring and then travelling by tornado by singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow. No, you can't convince me that wasn't her fault. We see her causing strangers to like her, we see her running away from danger, we see her bringing a clockwork robot and a tin man to life, we see her causing a power cut at a mental hospital at the exact moment that she's about to have an electric shock treatment. We see her with the ability to make the people that she sees in the real world also appear as versions in Oz. We see her able to kill witches by dropping houses on their heads and by throwing water at them, respectively. And we see her able to communicate with people trapped inside mirrors, and that's to say nothing of all the various shenanigans that she can pull off with her ruby slippers. So in game parlance, this translates to speak with animals, fly, blight, phantasmal force, charm monster, expeditious retreat, summon aberration, counterspell, hallucinatory terrain, shatter, negative energy flood, contact other plane, and teleportation circle. In the case of the 2014 version, she doesn't have access to negative energy flood or summon aberration, and in the case of 2024, she doesn't get shatter or detect magic. It's all much of a muchness, really. But at the end of all things, that leaves us with the following. And as you can see, thanks to her farmer background, the newer version of Dorothy has a much deeper hit pool than her older version. She also gets a higher AC thanks to a better dex score. She has substantially better wisdom and only a slightly worse charisma score to counterbalance this. But considering that charisma is her primary spellcasting stat, your mileage may vary on whether this is an acceptable compromise. Where she really does stand out, however, is her proficiencies. Just look at that. This version of Dorothy is going to be much better outside of combat. Their spells are pretty similar, so I'm not going to sweat too much over the differences there, but the key place where these two characters vary is in how they play on the tabletop and the role that they play in the party, because they are very, very different here. So the core class feature of the 2024 version of being able to misty step all over the place without a care in the world is simply non-existent in the 2014 version. The 2014 version is a very stationary character. Yes, she does have her familiar to fight on her behalf, but she can't really do much for herself other than charm the people around her and give herself some healing buffs. The 2024 version, however, really does feel like it has a clear identity on the battlefield. The speedy feat coupled with unlimited free casts of Levitate and her free uses of Misty Step as both reaction and when casting spells, means that this version of Dorothy is going to be zipping all over the battlefield, extremely mobile, darting all over the place, while in the meantime her familiar is out there fighting the enemies on her behalf and ensuring that she stays well out of danger. So just looking at this, I can already clearly picture how the 2024 version would play. The 2014 version, not so much. She doesn't feel like she has a clear role. Her features don't really seem to sync well together. And it's all just a bit of a hodgepodge of stuff. And so, just like when we're comparing the MGM Wizard of Oz original to its nightmare-fueled Disney sequel, I have to say the newer version of Dorothy Gale is much better than the original. So that's all for this video. So join me next time when we're going to be taking on Fighter. Now that's going to be fun. Until then, if you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Comment down below if you think I've made a mistake anywhere. How would you have done things differently? And is there anything that perhaps I overlooked in my creation of everyone's favorite Kansas resident? Until then, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week wherever you are. Do take care. Bye-bye.